Have you ever had the feeling that there is something much bigger happening behind the scenes of the most striking things in life? Yeah, the movie The Passion of Christ, directed by Mel Gibson and starring Jim Caviezel, was not just an overproduction about the last moments of Jesus. What no one told you, and that today I will reveal you, is that supernatural phenomena, real injuries, and intense spiritual experiences have taken over the set. And no, I'm not talking about backstage rumor. They were witnessed by actors, extras, and technical staff. Just imagine falling lightning in the clean sky, sudden windstorms, and a luminous figure walking between the extras. It looks like horror movie or biblical miracle, doesn't it? But it happened. And who was there guarantees there was something different in that place? And the most curious thing is that all this unfolded as Mel Gibson sought biblical authenticity, filming in Aramaic and recreating every detail of Christ's suffering. The line between fiction and reality have been confused in a way that still haunts Hollywood. If you enjoy real stories that challenge logic and carry signs of divine presence, stay with me to the end. Already leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the notification bell. I will tell you what happened away from the cameras, the spiritual experiences of actors like Maya Morgenstern and Claudia Girini, the miracles in the set, and even the spiritual alerts that Caviezel received over her career. Prepare yourself, because today you will see the passion of Christ from an angle that very few people know. From the early days of recording The Passion of Christ, the climate in the set of filming was not like that of any other production. Reports of inexplicable phenomena began to emerge, and those who witnessed it felt a shiver on the spine. Filming injuries were not just common set accidents, some happened in key scenes, in moments loaded with prayer and emotion. It was as if an invisible force was testing the spiritual resistance of all there. And then is that question in the air coincidence or a supernatural alert? In the rehearsal of a crucial scene, a sudden gale broke into the set, messing up equipment and scaring the team. Interestingly, this natural phenomenon arose whenever the recordings played in spiritually heavy passages. Many saw in this a divine manifestation. Others spoke of spiritual attack, but no one could explain. Supernatural phenomena became almost routine during filming, as if the environment were impregnated with something sacred and dangerous at the same time. To this day, some of the technicians refused to comment. Spiritual experiences didn't stop there. On several occasions, actors reported feeling mysterious presences, as if someone walked the set as the cameras rolled. Jim Caviezel even once mentioned the feeling of a hand landing on his shoulder during a scene, but there was no one behind him. This left the production intrigued and stressed the impression that this work exceeded the limit of entertainment. It was as if there was an invisible pact between heaven and earth sealed there. Real injuries also became frequent. Jim Caviezel didn't escape, and we'll talk about it later. But it wasn't just him. Extremes reported fainting, cameras inexplicably failed, and equipment crashed at specific times. Those who followed the progress of the scene swore something or someone interfered when Jesus' most dramatic passages came to life. Between prayer and spiritual resistance, the cast sought strength to continue. By this time, many were wondering, is it all just set bad luck or some kind of divine intervention? Mel Gibson, known for his intense faith, believed it was God marking presence. And if we stop to think, it makes sense. After all, we are talking about the reenactment of one of the most spiritually impactful moments in the history of humanity. And when the supernatural decides to visit the set, my friend, it has no filming plan that realizes. If you think acting in The Passion of Christ was just makeup and special effects, get ready to be surprised. Jim Caviezel lived on the skin, literally, the real suffering of Jesus. In one of the scenes where he carried the cross, the disproportionate weight combined with irregular terrain caused him to suffer a dialing in his shoulder. And the scariest? The camera continued to run, and Mel Gibson himself decided to keep that shot in the movie. According to him, the pain in Caviezel's face was so true that it would be sin to waste. Another impressive episode happened during the flagellation sequences. The actors representing the Roman soldiers wore scenographic whips with reinforced security, but on a slip, a blow escaped and hit Caviezel for real. The result? A deep wound that left a permanent scar. At that moment, the production stopped, a prayer was made, and at Jim's insistence, the recordings followed. He believed that this personal sacrifice was part of the spiritual mission of telling this story. But nothing compares to the most commented episode that set the fall of a lightning about Jim Caviezel during a filming high on Mount Golgotha. And it wasn't just him, an illumination assistant was also hit. Surprisingly, the two came out unharmed, but the fact left the team in shock. The scene in question recreated the moment of crucifixion, and this supernatural phenomenon only increased the aura of mystery around production. Mel Gibson faced as a spiritual sign, and Jim as a reminder of the weight he carried. These episodes of real suffering stirred everyone. The line between acting and spiritual experience has broken. It was no longer just about recording a movie, it was about reviving, somehow, the painful way of Christ. Jim Caviezel stated in interviews that he felt the divine presence in every moment of pain, as if heaven himself shared that weight. This commitment not only gave biblical authenticity to the feature, but transformed the environment of recording into a true spiritual battlefield. And do you know the curious? While in other productions any setback becomes reason for break and complaint, everything was viewed as part of a greater purpose. Filming, sudden windstorms, and inexplicable phenomena were received with prayer and spiritual resistance. It was a routine of a set that unintentionally became a sacred territory. And this mystique would only intensify in the spiritual and technical challenges that would come right after. If supernatural injuries and phenomena were no longer enough, the Passion of Christ faced technical challenges that still intrigued those who participated in filming. Cameras stopped working mysteriously in spiritually charged scenes. Tested and revised equipment crashed inexplicably. It was as if any invisible force tried to prevent certain images of being recorded. This did not happen once or twice. It was recurring throughout the production. In addition, many of the technical team reported a constant feeling of being observed. It was as if invisible presences walked to the set, especially during the scenes of the greatest suffering of Jesus. Jim Caviezel said in interviews that she felt sudden chills and perceived peripheral figures while filming. Some extras swore he heard whispered voices in Aramaic behind the scenes, even far from the recordings. Even the most skeptics started to get disconcerted. On one of these occasions, when problems seemed to multiply, Mel Gibson interrupted everything and asked everyone in the set to say a prayer together. Something rare in Hollywood. Let's face it. Interestingly, as soon as the prayer ended, the equipment went back to function normally. Who witnessed that never forgot. It was as if a spiritual resistance tried to break the message of the movie, but the prayer broke that invisible barrier. This climate of spiritual and technical tension eventually became routine. One of those responsible for the audio said the microphones captured strange sounds, noise that no one could locate. Other technicians reported malfunctioning of light-free lights and falls. Even with clean time, it was as if the set was under constant spiritual attack. And in this scenario, the only defense found by the cast and production was prayer and faith. With so many accumulated challenges, the atmosphere was seen as sacred and dangerous terrain. Filming injuries, sudden windstorms, inexplicable phenomena, and spiritual experiences are no longer exception. And every day, the feeling that something supernatural hung over that place only increased. The spiritual resistance of the team was put to the test, and the cast's commitment to the purpose of the film was even more evident. It was not just Jim Caviezel who felt the spiritual weight of that production. Maya Morgenstern, who played Maria, plunged so deeply into the pain of the character that, at times, needed to be supported out of the scene. She reported that during filming, she had so intense spiritual experiences that she felt as if she were actually witnessing the suffering of her own son. Her look in certain scenes was not acting, it was total delivery. Many witnessed silent prayer moments before and after the recordings. Claudia Girini, who lived Pilates' wife, also underwent experiments that extrapolated the script. During the intervals of filming, he began to have prophetic dreams, where he saw biblical passages that were not on the script. She said she woke up restless and felt an intense need to pray, even without being a religious person before the movie. This spiritual awakening eventually approached the cast, which began to gather spontaneously to moments of prayer on the set. This atmosphere of spiritual commitment has transformed the environment. It was no longer just a job, but a true mission. The actors, extras, and even the technicians began to face each scene as a living representation of a sacred moment. Many said they felt a divine presence hanging over the recordings, especially in the heavier moments. The biblical authenticity that Mel Gibson was looking for eventually spread to the whole team. The cast has come together in a chain of daily prayer, often before specific scenes. It was common to see small groups gathered in the set with eyes closed and hands, asking for protection and wisdom to conduct that work. Injuries and unexplainable filming and phenomena only reinforce the idea that they were stirring with much greater forces. And each actor knew that by accepting that role, he was also assuming a personal sacrifice and spiritual responsibility. This reverence climate eventually impacted the end result. The spiritual experiences lived there brought such an emotional load so intense to the scenes that the public can feel it to this day. Biblical authenticity did not just come from the use of the Aramaic language or the meticulous costumes, but from the heart and faith of those who were on the scene. And this spiritual union on the set was led by a leadership that knew the weight it carried Mel Gibson. If there's a word that defines Mel Gibson during the recordings of The Passion of Christ, this word is stubbornness. From the beginning, he made it clear that he would not concessions on behalf of the market or large studios. He insisted that the film be shot in Aramaic, Latin, and Hebrew to ensure biblical authenticity. Many tried to take him out of the idea, claiming that the public would not accept a long subtitle long. But Gibson believed that the strength of history would overcome any linguistic barrier. And it didn't stop there. Because of his stubbornness, Hollywood's big studios turned their backs on the project. No one wanted to associate with such a controversial work, loaded with spiritual symbols and supernatural phenomena. Mel Gibson then decided to play his own pocket movie, very rare in productions of this size. This further increased the pressure, but also gave it full freedom to maintain spiritual and artistic commitment. It was a personal and faith bet. Even with the reputation perfectionist, Gibson knew how to balance demand and care for the cast. He himself said prayers on the set before heavy scenes, and respected each actor's emotional time. Filming injuries were treated not only with medical assistance, but with moments of prayer and collective support. He was a hard but spiritual leader who understood that this movie was not just a work of art, it was a spiritual battlefield. At various times when unexplainable technical challenges or phenomena arose, it was Honey who led the moment of prayer to protect the team. He saw in spiritual difficulties sometimes a divine approval, sometimes a spiritual attack trying to boycott the project. And his look inspired the cast and production not to give up. Gibson's faith was not a speech, it was lived in practice, between cameras, dusty trails, and sudden windstorms. The result of this spiritualized leadership was a single recording environment, a set where supernatural phenomena were treated naturally, where spiritual experiments strengthened ties, and where the commitment to biblical authenticity shaped each decision. And of course, all this is a price, especially for Jim Caviezel, who received a clear warning from Honey this role would change his life and his career forever, and it would really change. Even before the recordings began, Mel Gibson called Jim Caviezel for a serious conversation. He said something like this: "If you accept this role, your Hollywood career will never be the same." Such a career warning would make any actor think twice, but Caviezel did not hesitate. He saw at that time more than fame or prestige, it was a spiritual mission, and he accepted his head up, knowing the weight he would carry. The curious thing is that Jim Caviezel knew the risks, but felt a calling. He himself said he couldn't live with him if he refused that role. Real suffering during filming and intense spiritual experiences only reinforced this certainty. Each injury, each spiritual attack, and each sudden gale were viewed as part of the necessary personal sacrifice. He believed that somehow his pain would have a positive impact on those who watched. And the consequences came fast. After the launch of The Passion of Christ, Caviezel began to notice doors closing in Hollywood. Great papers that were previously guaranteed simply disappeared. Producers feared to associate with someone so linked to a controversial project marked by supernatural phenomena. Some even said behind the scenes that he was cursed professionally. But Jim stared at this as part of the price. Even with the chase in Hollywood, Caviezel kept his head up. He continued making smaller films, devoting himself to Christian causes, and sharing his spiritual experiences in lectures and interviews. He has become an active voice about faith and spiritual resistance, showing that biblical authenticity and total delivery do not fit in the conventional manner of industry. And for him, that was worth more than any blockbuster. This story of personal sacrifice is a powerful reminder sometimes following a greater purpose requires giving up privileges, status, and security. Jim Caviezel exchanged the comfort of fame for the intensity of a spiritual mission. And even carrying scars physical and emotional, he never regretted. Because I knew that movie was bigger than all of them. And soon, even more impressive signs would make it clear. During the recordings of The Passion of Christ, it was not only the filming injuries and the spiritual attacks that drew attention. Some natural phenomena began to happen at decisive times, and no one could explain. One of the most striking was a sudden gale that formed at the exact moment Caviezel interpreted Jesus' last words on the cross. There was no strong wind that day, but he came violent and unexpected, and it wasn't any wind. The equipment was almost knocked down, extras were startled, and the cameras had to be in a hurry. The detail? As soon as the scene ended, the wind ceased, as if it had come only for that specific moment. Many on the set interpreted this as a manifestation of the divine presence, reinforcing that this movie was being closely followed by higher forces. It was impossible to ignore. Another episode that marked everyone was the fall of the lightning that hit Jim Caviezel during a scene high of the hill. Yes, he was literally hit by lightning and survived. And it wasn't the first time the camera assistant had also been hit minutes earlier. The probability of this happening twice in a row in the same place at the same time is almost null. But it happened. And once again, many have seen in this a spiritual sign, not a coincidence. These supernatural and natural phenomena were not treated with sensationalism by the cast. On the contrary, Mel Gibson asked everyone to face events with respect and prayer. The team believed that the winds, the rays, and the unexplainable phenomena were a response to the personal sacrifice and spiritual resistance of all there, a reminder that they were moving with sacred themes, and that this would have visible and invisible consequences. From there, each sudden gale or electric failure was received with reverence. Extras and actors reported chills, and the feeling of invisible presence is observing. The Passion of Christ is no longer just a movie to becoming a collective spiritual experience. And while inexplicable phenomena continued to emerge, the team knew that was just the beginning. The most intriguing was yet to happen behind the scenes. If so far natural phenomena and spiritual experiences have already impressed, a specific event profoundly marked the set of filming of The Passion of Christ. During the recording of a multitude scene, some extras reported having seen a luminous figure walking between them. At first, they thought it was some team member using reflective equipment. But as they turned to check it out, there was no one else there. The most curious thing is that several reports coincided in the same detail. The luminous figure exuded an inexplicable calm and seemed to observe the filming with a slight smile. It was not a threatening presence, but there was something supernatural. Some describe how a silhouette wrapped in a soft white light that disappeared as someone was trying to approach. Supernatural phenomena were already common there, but this episode exceeded all expectations. Mel Gibson, when he learned of the incident, asked the matter to be treated with discretion and respect. Instead of panic or superstition, he told the team to say a collective prayer, thanking for the possible divine presence or anyone there. Filming injuries, sudden windstorms, and other inexplicable phenomena have made even more sense in the face of this appearance. The entire set was taken by an atmosphere of reverence. To date, no official record or plausible explanation has been found. Neither security cameras or making of managed to capture such a luminous figure. It was as if that presence had been visible only for those who needed to see it. For the cast and production, it was clear that they were involved in something that transcended cinema or entertainment. The Passion of Christ had become a true spiritual field. This episode sealed the conviction of all that they were under strong spiritual protection, but also under constant spiritual attack. The testimonies about this luminous figure are remembered to this day by those who participated in filming. And if someone still doubted the supernatural phenomena or the biblical authenticity present in the project, after that, he no longer had the courage to question. It was the last signal, at least until the release. What happened behind the scenes of a great production like The Passion of Christ goes beyond what we see on the screens. Real lesions, inexplicable phenomena, and intense spiritual experiences are just a fraction of what really happened during filming. Every detail of this production has been shaped by something much bigger. And if you've followed here, you already know that we are talking about a divine mystery that cannot be ignored. But as in every great story, the true question is, how will you apply this experience to your own life? How can you surrender to a greater purpose? Even when the path seems full of obstacles, sacrifice, faith, and spiritual resistance shown during the filming of Christ's Passion reminds us that life is full of moments that require courage and commitment. Perhaps, deep down, we all have a bigger mission ahead. Now, I invite you to reflect on this. Were you willing to sacrifice to follow your purpose? Are you ready to face challenges, whether spiritual or natural, with faith and courage? If you want more stories like this and powerful insights on how to transform your life, subscribe to the channel and enable notifications. The journey is just beginning, and you won't want to lose what's coming.